Harold sat quietly in his recliner, the late afternoon sun casting golden rays across his living room. The ticking of the clock marked each passing second, and yet time felt like it had taken on a new pace, slower, heavier. At 83, he was surrounded by reminders of the past, faded photographs of his younger self hiking mountain trails, handwritten letters from a time before email, a dusty tennis racket leaning against the corner. He still read the paper every morning and took his tea the same way his wife used to make it, but something inside him had shifted. He'd lost two friends just this year, one to a fall, the other to a sudden illness. Another, Jim, now lived in a nursing home and barely recognized him anymore. They had all seemed fine at 79, and then something changed. Harold felt it too. His steps were slower. His memory, though still intact, sometimes took a little longer to find names. Most of all, he felt invisible, like the world had moved on. That was until he met Alice. Alice was 102, though you wouldn't know it by the way she moved. She lived just 2 doors down and had recently relocated to the neighborhood to be closer to her great-grandchildren. Harold first saw her pruning rose bushes with a sun hat and gloves, bending and reaching with a flexibility that seemed decades too young. He walked by that day and offered a shy compliment on her garden. She smiled and offered him lemonade. That glass of lemonade turned into an hour-long conversation, and that conversation turned into a week of questions that Harold couldn't stop asking. Why do so many people decline after 80, and how was she thriving well past 100? Alice didn't pretend to have all the answers, but she did share 5 secrets that she said had made all the difference. Secret 1, don't stop moving. Most people slow down, then stop altogether, Alice said as they strolled the neighborhood. It starts with avoiding stairs, then they stop going on walks. Before long, their muscles forget how to carry them. Harold had to admit his own legs had grown stiff lately. Alice, however, walked a mile every morning before breakfast and another in the evening. She never joined a gym but stayed active gardening, cleaning, dancing. The body's like a pond, she told him. If it doesn't move, it grows stagnant. That week, Harold began walking again, at first just around the block, then 2 blocks, then 5. Each step returned something he'd lost. Secret 2, eat less, but eat better. Alice didn't believe in diets or fads. Her meals were light but full of life, vegetables, whole grains, fruits, legumes, and occasional fish. She rarely ate red meat, skipped sugar almost entirely, and hadn't touched processed food in over 30 years. You want your body to keep working? Feed it things that grow, she said. Harold remembered how his meals had changed. Frozen dinners, canned soups, too much bread and butter. He hadn't felt truly energized after a meal in years. Alice showed him how to make a simple vegetable stew and a morning bowl of oats with nuts and berries. It felt like feeding a fire after letting it smolder. Secret 3, stay curious. Your brain needs exercise just like your legs, Alice said one day, handing him a book on astronomy. You don't have to understand it all, just be fascinated. Alice read constantly, not just novels, but science, philosophy, poetry. She learned Spanish in her 90s and was now working on painting with watercolors. Curiosity keeps you young. When you stop learning, your mind starts shutting doors. Harold dusted off his old crossword books, then joined a free online course on world history. The more he learned, the more he wanted to know. The spark that had dimmed inside him for years was flickering again. Secret 4, don't live alone inside your head. This one's hardest for people our age, Alice admitted. So many of us lose our partners, our siblings, our friends, and then we isolate. But isolation ages us faster than illness. Alice surrounded herself with people, young and old. She volunteered at the library, hosted Sunday tea with neighbors, and video called her grandchildren every week. Harold realized how quiet his days had become. Too quiet. He started calling his niece every Thursday, joined Alice for tea, attended a local storytelling group. He felt himself opening again, like a long shut window catching the breeze. Secret 5, keep a reason to wake up. The final lesson came quietly. Alice invited Harold over one morning and pointed to her wall, filled with drawings from her great-grandchildren. That's my reason, she said. Every day I want to live well, so they can see what strong looks like at 100. Everyone, she believed, needed a purpose. It didn't have to be big, but it had to matter. You need a reason to lace up your shoes, chop your veggies, learn something new, laugh out loud. Otherwise, what's the point? Harold went home that night and sat with the question. What was his reason? He remembered the stories he used to write, small town mysteries and nostalgic essays. He hadn't touched his typewriter in 20 years. The next morning, he pulled it out, dusted it off, and wrote the first paragraph of a new story. It didn't matter if no one read it. He was writing again. That was enough. A year passed. Harold turned 84 with stronger legs, sharper thoughts, and a deeper laugh than he'd had in a decade. He walked 3 miles a day, cooked his own meals, and had even printed a collection of short stories for his family. He didn't feel like he was fading anymore. He felt like he was beginning again. When people asked him what had changed, he didn't talk about supplements or miracle cures. He spoke about Alice and her 5 secrets. He visited her one afternoon and found her on the porch, sipping tea, watching the light shift through the trees. "You know," he said, "you may have saved my life." She smiled and handed him a cup. "You just needed reminding that it wasn't over. Not yet." Because decline after 80 isn't inevitable. For some, it's the beginning of the richest chapter yet, if you have the courage to turn the page.